I decided it was time to answer some questions that I've been getting from some of my viewers. I've not had a huge amount of questions asked me, but I've had some, and I've been saving them up for enough to be able to do this particular episode of Turn Talk. And I decided to put this question and answer session in the Turn Talk series because, well, I think that's where it belongs. Even though not every question is concerning turning, it's all woodworking related. And many of my viewers watch all of my projects, be they turning or flat work or whatever it is I'm doing. Where do we start? Which question to go with first? I pondered that too. I decided to answer what may be the most wondered question, and that's when did I start turning? Actually, I first started turning, my first experience with a lathe was in the late 60s when I was in high school. I wasn't very good at it. I wasn't very good at woodworking either, for that matter, because back then it was all mainly hand tool work. I mean, if you wanted to sand it, you grabbed some sandpaper and a sanding block and went at it. That's where I suffered. My ADD wouldn't allow me the stick-to-itiveness to really put a fine finish on a piece of woodworking. I didn't have any problem cutting the joints, and I didn't have any problem putting the pieces together or getting measurements the right length. That wasn't my issue. My issue was always in finish, and simply because I didn't have the patience necessary. I still don't. I really don't. So I started turning in the late 60s. Anyway, long time passes. So now that I chased that rabbit, let's answer the question. When did I start turning? Well, I started seriously turning in 2003. My wife bought me for my birthday a cheap, like it was on sale for like $65, Harbor Freight lathe, and I mean cheap. It was about 42 inches long, I believe. The bedways were made of thin wall tube steel. You could, seriously, if you were to crank down on the tailstock with a piece between centers, you could watch the bedways bow. It was absolutely horrible. A non-variable speed, of course, you had to change the belts in order to get to change the speed, and I think the slowest speed on that thing was close to 500 RPM. Scary lathe. Back then, I couldn't find any chucks to fit it. That nobody made. They weren't using a standard thread on their headstock. It was some off-the-wall thing, and I couldn't find adapters to get a chuck to fit up to it. I only had the lathe a couple of months anyway. I really got tired of the bedways bowing, and so I sold it 2-3 months after she bought it, and actually got what she paid for it out of it. So I was happy about that. I immediately upgraded. I found a 10-inch Delta MIDI lathe, again non-variable speed back then. I used 10-inch Delta MIDI lathe for sale on, I don't remember if it was Craigslist or something else. Anyway, I picked it up, and it let me do the kinds of things that I was doing then, which were mainly pins and small bowls. And I immediately bought a pin mandrel and all of the stuff necessary in order to do pins. I got started doing that pretty heavy. On occasion, I would turn a small box or a small bowl or whatever. Within a few months of getting the Delta, I decided I seriously wanted to turn bigger things. So I bought a 15-inch Craftsman variable speed lathe, and I thought I was in hog heaven for a little while. It was a variable speed, being it was a Reeves drive. If that's all you have, it's great, but they require maintenance, and I'm not the best there either. And they require periodic maintenance, and again, I'm not the best there either. But it did the job, but I quickly discovered that it wasn't big enough. I wanted to do things bigger than 15 inches. I wanted to do a 16, 17, or 18 inch platter. I turned with that 15 inch Craftsman for about a year and a half. And a friend that I had made through the International Association of Pen Turners, I'm still a member, by the way. I haven't been to the site in ages, but I am still a member of the International Association of Pen Turners, and a lot of my wood turning and pen turning friends are. But a friend of mine through IAP heard that I was looking for a new lathe, a bigger lathe, and he told me that he had an opportunity he has a small business, and he said he could get me a Powermatic 3520B for, I think including shipping and everything, it was like $2,500. Again, this was in 05. It was in 05, it's the 95th anniversary edition. And I said, sure, let's do it. I had enough money saved up. So, and I was making some decent money on my pens. And I pulled the trigger on my 3520B, and I've never looked back. I couldn't be happier. I love my Powermatic. It's a great lathe. Which brings me to another question that I was recently asked, and that was, why have I ordered yet another lathe? Is my Powermatic not good enough? Well, the answer to that question is, yeah, of course it is. The lathe that I ordered is another Powermatic. It just happens to be the new 14-inch version. And the reason, because I don't need another full-size lathe. And yes, I could have gotten the Powermatic 2020, which is the same thing as my 3520B, but it's only got a 20-inch. But you can only turn like 20-inch spindles on it. And that's fine with me because I don't do much spindle turning. And if I do spindle turning, I've got my old Delta that is now a variable speed, and I also have a bed extension on it. That'll do any spindle I want to do. No, it won't do big porch columns. I don't ever want to turn a big porch column. I don't know about y'all, but I'm not a production turner, and I don't care to do those sorts of things. I like making vases. I like making hollow forms. I like turning bowls. I like turning pins. I like turning... No, I don't. I really don't like turning pins. I don't know why I said that. I used to really like turning pins, but after you've turned hundreds of them, at the very least, it gets kind of old. I did production turn pinning. I did production turn pinning at one point. I did do production pin turning at one point, and it was, I'm retired, you know, I'm not looking for a job. So that's why I don't turn a whole lot of pins anymore. I got burnt out on it. So, I started turning in 03, quickly progressed up to a bigger lathe in 2005, and I used to have 4 lathes. I had 2 Delta Midis, my Powermatic and the Nova. I gave one of the Delta Midis to a good friend of mine who wanted to get started in turning, and I kept the long one, or the one with the bed extension on it, and I recently sold my Nova because I needed something bigger than a 12-inch lathe, and 14-inch will keep me busy. And the reason I want a second lathe, or third, the reason I want the mid-sized lathe, 14 inches big enough, I've usually got things going on one lathe or another all the time. This will keep one lathe pretty much busy. If I've got something in a chuck on one of the lathes and I'm waiting for glue or epoxy or whatever to dry, then that leaves the other lathe free for me to get on with the next project or a lid for the current project. That sort of thing. That's why I like having multiple lathes. Wow, that took a whole lot longer than I anticipated. Why? Because I can't shut my mouth. Another question I got is, where did I get my Skew, my 1-inch Skew? Well, I actually have 2 of them. One came with I bought the more expensive Harbor Freight set back in 2003, and it came out of that. I have reground it and reshaped it almost all over the place. It is now in the form of how Alan Lacer does his, and I did it on this one to practice for what I'm going to do on the other Skew that I'll show you in a second. But this bottom is almost completely rounded, not quite. It should be completely rounded, and it serves enough purpose the way it is. And the top corners are rounded as well, but not nearly to the extent that they are down here. And then I put the flat grind with the sweepback on top. And if you want to know how and why all that happens, I'll put a link up here to one of Alan Lacer's videos that shows you everything you want to know about this grind. I learned it from him in person, and I've never looked back. This is just the only way to go. My other Skew, there's a link in the description below where I got it. It's Robert Sorby. It's a 1-inch Skew. It did have the corners were rounded on it, but not, the bottom wasn't rounded to the degree of Alan Lacer's configuration. It is now. I did this on my belt sander. I have not reshaped the tip yet because I'm still finalizing what angles and cuts and whatnot I want using the other one. And when I get that all fine-tuned, which I'm really close now, I will regrind the tip of this. It came unhandled for like $40. It's not a bad deal at all, and it's good Robert Sorby steel. A lot of people have seen me use these Scotchbrite pads on one project or another, and a couple have asked me, you know, what these are and where I get them. There's a link in the description where you can get this exact set. The grits are, and they are kind of in grits. I'm not sure what the grit of the green one is. I don't even have one. But it's a scouring pad. The maroon one is called General Purpose or General Duty, I think. I don't remember. Or, anyway, it's the more coarse. It's from like 220 to 340 grit, thereabouts, equivalent. These are non-woven pads, and they're good for anything we would normally use steel wool for. And the reason I like these over steel wool is because it doesn't leave the steel dust behind. It will leave the dust of some of the finish that you're trying to knock down, and that's what these are for. They're for knocking finish down. So this one's like I said, 220 to like 340. The gray is what they call their ultra fine grit. I don't consider it ultra fine, but they do. They say it's the equivalent of about 2/0 steel wool and 2,000 to 2,500 grit and sandpaper. I don't think they have those quite right, because you can go from the maroon to the gray and not see a lot of, there's no marks left over, is what I'm saying. It gets them off. This is the one that I actually consider the most ultra fine, and I believe they've got this one listed as general purpose. I don't remember exactly, but I do know that the grit on this is greater than 2,500. It's actually 2,500 and up. So it's a nice little polishing pad if you need to do that. And like I said, I prefer those over steel wool simply because I don't have the steel wool dust left behind that I have to try to deal with later. I was asked about my dust collection blast gates because they've got brackets on them that mount to, you can either mount them to an upright, a brace, or even the wall. I got these on Amazon. These are not, I'm not kidding anybody. These are not the very best quality blast gates that you're going to find, but you're not going to pay that kind of price for them either. Really high quality blast gates are typically the aluminum ones, the metal ones, and they'll run you for a blast gate what this set cost me for like 6 of them. Anyway, there's a link in the description below where I got them. There is a little bit of leakage through them, but it's not enough to worry me or my system because of the way I've got it configured. It works just fine. I've also been asked what epoxy I use and why, and the answer to that is pretty simple. I use Bob Smith Industries epoxy. I really like it. If I was still doing radio controlled models today, this is the only thing I would use. I use both the 30 and the 5-minute cure. I would probably use 15 as well if I could find some. There's a link in the description below where I get it. I also get it on Amazon. And the reason that I like it is because, like all epoxies of that nature, it's yellows like all epoxies do. But I don't care, because seldom, if I'm using this in a woodworking project, am I not coloring it. I mean, if I'm using it to hold two pieces together, you're never going to see the glue in the glue joint anyway. I don't care if it yellows. If I need to fill a void real quickly, I use this. And I like this stuff because I've not found a coloring agent that I use that it won't take. And it still hardens up. Yes, sometimes if you use a little too much of the coloring agent, it will increase the cure time. But I don't care about that either. I'm just trying to get that hole filled or that void filled. If it takes me overnight to let it set up, which I usually do anyway, just to make sure I get a good cure on it, so be it. Over here on this card is my liquid diamonds. I've been asked where I get that. A link in the description below, again off of Amazon. I briefly mentioned in one video about a tip that I got from Captain Eddie Castellan for putting something on my face shield to keep static electricity down and to make it easier to clean. And I was asked what that was, and it's simply STP Son of a gun. This is a protectorant. It's for cleaning and shining and protecting vinyl, rubber, and plastic. It does a great job on your face shield. One little spray, wipe it down. You do it once a month, and you're good to go. This is a really good idea. Again, link in the description below. I was asked about my turner's tape and why I use this. Well, it's woodworking tape for starters. I like it because, well, I've used a number of different double-sided tapes. I like this one because it's thin. When you pull this backing is not terribly thin, but the pressure-sensitive glue, or on the fabric that it's on both sides of this it's really good. So it's nice and thin. It doesn't add enough thickness to your piece to really make a big difference, unlike the double-sided duct tape, which I also have used. It too is pressure sensitive. What does that mean? That means you apply it to one side, peel the stuff off, stick the other piece to it, and then apply pressure to it, and the longer it's under pressure, the better the stick. Keep that in mind when it comes time to get it off. It does come off, and it doesn't come off terribly hard. It will stick to one piece or the other, but it peels off of that as well too. And I like this stuff because it's not bad about leaving residue behind, unlike some double-sided tapes. So it comes in a 3-pack, more than I'll probably ever need in my lifetime, but it wasn't terribly expensive. It's by XFasten. This is it. Link in the description below. Good stuff if you need double-sided tape. The last question I have, we're going to take a trip over and answer. The last question I have is about my workbench, Vise. A lot of people saw I didn't ever really do a video on the building of my workbench, but it's been on my Facebook page, it's been on my Instagram, and a lot of people have seen the story of that as it was coming together, and I was asked about the vise on it the other day. So let's go over and let me show you that. This is the vise on my workbench. It's a 9-inch Yost. A nice vise. There are more expensive vices out there, but this one does the trick nicely. It clamps up quickly. One of the things that I like about it and why I bought this one, there's actually 2 reasons. If I want the dog up when I'm doing some work on the bench, I can put the dog up. This loosens and tightens it in place, so I can do that. Another thing I really like about it is the quick release right here. So you just get it roughly in or out to the depth you want. You're not cranking and cranking and cranking on this in order to tighten it up. So that's the Yost 9-inch bench vise. Link in the description below. So that's pretty much it for this episode of Turn Talk. I really appreciate you sticking with me, coming along for the little chat, coming in to say hi, whatever. It is appreciated. Like I said, I've received a few questions, not a terrible amount, but I received a few questions and I thought it was time for me to address those. I hope it helps. That's why I do this, and I really appreciate it. I really do. Please like, share, all that social media stuff. If you know maker friends or turner friends that have some of the similar kinds of questions, point them to this video. I'd really appreciate it. It may help them out. And as always, if you have questions, right here, this email address. I will start my next question log, and when I get enough questions built up, I'll come back in and answer them. So for the time being, I appreciate it. I really do. I continue to pray that you're all well and safe in this crazy time we're going through. I keep saying, as does everybody else, hang in there, folks. We will get through this, and we will. Level heads, as the saying goes, will prevail. So may God bless and keep you until again we get a chance to talk. And I truly appreciate it. I appreciate your patience, and I appreciate you putting up with my old rambling self. Y'all come back.